City Attorney.
To accomplish the city's 2020 decennial redistricting process. As you may recall, the first public hearing and kickoff to the process began at the November 9th City Council meeting. At the second public hearing, it was held on December 14th. We reviewed some of the same background facts and information that we presented at the first public hearing, which included the reasons why we have to undertake this process, some of the legal standards we must adhere to, and then some of the data in the district populations and census. At the second public hearing, staff unveiled a draft map that would revise the city council boundaries to shift populations from some districts into others so as to ensure each council district is roughly equal in population. So tonight we have more detail about the draft map that's presented at the last meeting, and we will explain some of the changes between the 2016 map and the proposed map. And Lori Sampson, Executive Assistant, is on Zoom to help us explain some of the city's online districting mapping tools, how members of the public can submit their own proposals, and can explain some of the changes proposed by the proposed map. This is a depiction of the existing boundaries established in 2016. And as you know from prior hearings, we're required to reevaluate the electoral district boundaries every 10 years following the federal census. Back in 2016, when the City Council first changed and transitioned from at-large voting to by-district election system, they adopted this map, and it, at the time, also created a district's election sequencing schedule that provided that council members in Districts 1, 2, and 3 would be elected in November 2016 and every 4 years thereafter, and that council members in Districts 4 and 5 would be elected in November 2018 and every 4 years thereafter. Under the schedule, council members in Districts 4 and 5 will be elected in November of 2022. This slide depicts the current electoral districts again, but notes that in 2020, the city annexed a small area adjacent to District 5 as part of the Fields annexation.
It's the wrong map.
I also want to point out that the current adopted city council district map that was adopted in 2016 was based upon 2010 census data. And thus, in 2016, the most recent data that was available at that time was that 2010 census. We went over this at our last couple hearings, but we are required to follow certain legal standards in setting district boundaries. They must comply with the Federal Voting Rights Act of 1965, which requires that each district must have approximately the same population, so that each council member is representing approximately the same number of voters. District boundaries cannot be drawn to dilute the voting power protected classes. We also have to make sure that the districts are geographically contiguous. They recognize the integrity of local neighborhoods or community of interest, that the boundaries are as much as possible easily identifiable, that they are designed and drawn to encourage compactness and not drawn for the purpose of favoring or discriminating against any political party. So as we talked about the last time, in 2016, the population at that time was depicted on the left by each district, creating a population deviation from ideal of 6.32%. I will spare you going through the ideal population math that I've done a couple times before. Then on 2020, if we apply the same districts, apply it to the current census data, the 2020 census, we have a 26% deviation from ideal. So we do have to make some adjustments to the boundaries to bring them within the 10% deviation that is permissible. So, at the last public hearing, staff presented the following map that's presented and depicted here on the screen. We have so far have not received any map submissions from the public to provide alternative mapping for this redistricting process. So this is the current proposed map for your consideration. Now, to go over the various changes that this map is proposing from the current, if Ms. Sampson is on Zoom, I will turn it over to her to explain the differences as we walk through each district. Ms. Sampson?
Yes, thank you, Kevin. Good evening, Mayor, council members. I hope you can hear me. I'm at home. We did shift populations from several districts. So you can see from District 1, we went from the center of town, which was the 10 freeway on the south, Wilson on the north, and then it goes between San Gorgonio and Sunset. In order to shift some of the populations into 1, because we're moving some out, we added on a section from Omar. It goes from Sunset to Omar, and then down Omar to Jacinto View and back to Sunset. So that added about 1,287 people to that section. Something to think about, we moved a lot of people from district to district, but this is an election year. 4 and 5 are the only districts that are up for election. So these particular 1,287 people that we moved from 4 into 1 would normally have voted this year, but they will not. They will be voting in 2024. So something for those people that live in that section to think about. In District 2, we added, District 2 looks pretty much like it did. We added some people from District 5 or District 1, right? District 1. Those are some of the people that we have to shift from 1 into 2. That doesn't change their voting pattern. So that's what we did with District 2. I believe that's about 1,200 people that we moved. 3 remain the same. It seems to be almost impossible to add or subtract people from that. We'll see how that works out in 2030, but we did not make any changes to District 3. District 4, we made a few changes. You'll see along the bottom, we carved out some of the people to move them into District 2, since District 2 was the one that did not have enough people. We also had to take a little bit out of, did we move them in? Out. We took some people from 4 and put them into 5. Maybe we did it backwards. I don't know, I'm sorry. A little hazy in the head today. District 5, you can see the little kind of a knob right there between 4 and 5. That used to be complete, all of 5, and we moved some of it back into District 4 because we moved so many from 4 to 1. But 4 and 5 are on the same voting pattern, so that will not affect that at all. So there's the difference in 5. You can see how that little knob on the west side is a little bit different. We also have a little bit extra land in the middle near the reservation land. It's not populated, so it didn't affect our numbers. And then these are the data that backs that up. So when the census was done, before we changed anything, we were out of compliance. We needed to be at 10% or below, and we were at 26%. So after moving these populations, we are now at 7%. And if you look at the racial composition of each one of the districts, they remain the same. Even if they dropped a little bit, if it is a predominantly Hispanic district, it still is. We did not flip any of the districts by race. So these are our numbers following the redistricting. So you can see we're very close in numbers. We have what I guess I call it, it's not a technical term, underfunded District 4 because we know there is potential growth coming there, a lot of growth coming there, and also in District 5. And so that's why we kind of front loaded District 1 and then left the other districts with room for growth. And then afterwards, I believe we're at a 7% deviation, which we just need to be below 10. So we're right where we want to be. Everything that we have presented is online. So if you go to the city website, there are rotating slides, and one of them is Redistricting 2020. So if you go there, it will take you to where all the documentation is, the public notices, videos of these meetings, minutes from the meetings, the agendas for these meetings. Everything is in there so that it can be looked at and reviewed. For anyone who's interested in participating in this process, it's all there. There are mapping tools, so they can participate in creating a map if they'd like to. There's a blank map for them to use if they want to print it out and do it by hand. They can do that. Any kind of feedback, my email is in there. My phone number is in there. If anyone wants to offer suggestions or an alternate map, we're very anxious to see if anybody has any feedback on this. And then our final public hearing will be on February 25th or 22nd, I'm sorry. And I believe we will be submitting Ordinance 1581, which will show the new boundaries.
And if I would just add, Ms. Sampson, have you set a date for the deadline for individuals and residents to submit their own independent maps?
You know, I have not been able to find any language that determines what a deadline should be. So I imagine as a part of this record, we could probably set one tonight. Can we do that?
Yes, and it's a matter of practicality to ensure that staff would have the time to consider the map, provide an analysis of it, and be able to present it, not only post it 7 days in advance of the final public hearing, but also explain it to the council. So backing from the 22nd up from that date, what would be your suggestion, Ms. Sampson? Maybe by the end of this month?
Yeah, it doesn't leave a lot of time. In order for it to be, well, 7 days, 14, and then review, we'd probably have to have it by February 1st in order to be able to review it and then.
Right, put the data into it and analyze it and present it. So I think that's appropriate, and that, Mr. Mayor, would be.
That's like 3 or 4 days?
That's, yes. But if you want more time, you can do that. It just needs to be enough time to allow staff.
Just curious, the deadline is April 17th, but from what I'm hearing is the final proposal will be presented on the 22nd and we'll vote and decide then?
Only if the council is ready to do so. If the council is not ready to act, you do not have to act on the 22nd. As you indicated, we just have to have second reading of an ordinance adopted by April 17th.
I would just suggest this is short notice to implement a deadline, 5 days away?
Okay. All right. Well, maybe Ms. Sampson consider that.
Can I
Yes, go
ask
ahead.
a question with that? Do we know, or did we have anyone turn in any maps or any kind of correspondence so far with Ms. Sampson?
No, none.
Okay, so at this point, before you deliberate and provide your direction, it's appropriate to open the public hearing, take any testimony from the public before you close to the public testimony portion and start deliberating on your direction.
I'll go ahead and open it up for public hearing. Public comments. Seeing no public comment, I'll bring it back up to the dais. Would anyone like to?
So let's just stay on that point. I'm curious about the timeline that's here in the agenda. There's an April 17th final deadline for completion of the process. Is that a public meeting date, or is that just a date in the middle of April?
So there's a specific date in state law that is a certain number of days before the November 2022 election, and you count that number of days back, and it hits April 17th. So it does not reflect an actual council meeting date.
Okay. All right. Well, I would just reiterate that to determine a 5-day deadline doesn't seem appropriate right now, in this late in the process. I mean, it would have been great if we had published that in the beginning of the process. Well, the deadline is February 1st. But for us to determine that is, at this point, I think it would be fair to give the public, since we have not received any, is that right? Nothing from the public yet?
So all of the public hearing dates were provided from the beginning.
No, the public hearing dates, I understand, but a deadline to submit an alternative map seems, well, and the reason is I've been thinking, and maybe this is a question for, well, I'm not sure who this is a question for, but if we could go back to the maps, the original or the current map, and then the proposed map suggested by staff.
Here is the current map. I believe,
That's,
I'm sorry. Hold on. Now let's go to this one.
that's labeled, there we go.
You want to look at that one? And the proposed one is this one. Would you prefer to look at
Can we
the-
blow it up on the screen? I can't see it.
Let's see, how do I do that?
Thank you. So this is the draft map that's been prepared by staff. And,
Is it control?
okay,
Where would you like to go? Okay.
yeah, that's good.
Where would you like to zoom in?
No, this is fine. This is
Okay.
fine. Thank you. So this is the draft map, and so I had an interesting observation on this, and that is that if you go down to what our guidelines are, and I'm scrolling down on my agenda here. Where did it go? Starting on the bottom of page 30 on the agenda, it says the council shall adopt council district boundaries that comply with the United States Constitution, the California Constitution, the Federal Voting Rights Act of 1965, code section, and adopt the district boundaries using the following criteria as set forth in the following order of priority. So the first priority is geographically contiguous. And we can sum that up that both maps, and this is the first priority, both maps meet that criteria. We don't have any islands anywhere. Although, if you could put up the map again, the proposed map. Thank you. There certainly are some peninsulas in this. There are no islands, though. But my greater concern is that on item 2, to the extent practical, the geographic integrity of any local neighborhood or local community of interest shall be respected in a manner that minimizes its division. A community of interest is a population that shares common social or economic interests that should be included within a single district for purposes of its effective and fair representation. Communities of interest do not include relationships with political parties, incumbents, or political candidates. So on item 2, I think we really got away on this map from the weight of that priority. It is the second listed priority. Number 1's already checked off. We don't have any islands. But number 2, when I look at this map, I think about the historic residential area of the city of Banning, and I don't see it divided into 2 different districts. I see it divided into 5 different districts, and I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around how that meets priority number 2 for the neighborhood between San Gorgonio, Ramsey, and 16th Street, which would be the historic residential area of the city of Banning, and north of that. That's the particular area I'm talking about that's divided into 5 different districts. And that's the historic core of the residential area of the city. And I think it would be incumbent on us to, since there's been no alternate maps submitted by the public, for perhaps staff to present an alternate themselves that addresses this issue. And the third item on the priority list is council district boundaries should be easily identifiable, understandably to residents. And, I think that the boundaries are pretty, we're using streets and census blocks. I don't see a big issue with this item. I could be wrong, but I didn't notice that. But item number 4, the geographic compactness, I do notice that, 1 got stretched out, 4 got, a little more stretched out in a way, and I'm not sure that that there's been a lot of weight to that as well. So with that, I'm going to request that we get an alternate map from staff, taking those considerations into those facts into consideration, that these are the goals and the criteria and priorities that are laid out on the Fair Maps Act redistricting requirements and criteria. And any comments, staff? Go ahead.
I have a question. Councilmember Happy, are you basically saying that where the districts 4, 1, 2, and 5 intersect in this
Yeah, if you
kinda
look between,
downtown core,
exactly.
you're saying that that should ideally be its own district and not divided at that point? Because I'm not sure there's enough population that would be left in the perimeter districts if you didn't.
Well,
pull
to
them-
me, that district should be District 1, just from a purely logical point. Now, mapping it out and doing all the math and all that, I don't know if that works.
Yeah,
but
'cause
to
you're gonna need to pull
You've
some
got
of
that
this
area
downtown
divided
area
into 5
into
different
those-
districts. Currently. 5 different districts. Currently, on this proposal.
Okay.
So, I'm not sure how that meets the goal and the priority number 2 here.
Okay, let me go
In
back.
fact, it does not.
So if we go to, so this is kind of the current, which I know it's not overlaid against the streets, but that,
Well, so with this current map, I would argue that this current map, which of course this council had nothing to do with, divided that area into 3 different districts.
4, 1, and 5, and
Yeah.
some of 2.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's generally the same configuration between the current map and, but, yeah, this deviation, this deviation, this deviation, to pull and move population to make them equal. So, Ms. Sampson, do you have questions or comments about the council member's idea?
I don't have any comment. I'll have to go back and check my notes to see how to reconfigure the map.
So,
District 2 has to have more people.
so I went in, and sat down with Ms. Sampson and we were discussing this. And because I was trying to figure it out, and I asked, okay, what if we take this street and that street? So she took the time and explained everything, and she goes, okay, if I do that, then it puts them over, and it's not enough. It's actually, there's a lot of factors going in.
Oh, I know, believe me. It's not simple. It's just that I don't believe that this particular configuration puts enough weight to priority number 2. That's all. And if we could, if I realize that there's a lot of considerations and it's not easy, and that's probably why we haven't gotten any other maps from the public. But based on my observation here, I think that certainly council should have more than one choice, especially considering this, this historic neighborhood went from 3 districts to 5.
Well, when you say 5, 3 doesn't reach
Oh,
out.
I'm sorry, 4.
4.
My apologies. Yeah, it does not include District 3. But it does now. The old, the oldest continuous neighborhood basically in Banning is now divided to 3 different council districts. So if you look at the priority list, and I realize that, that's the general overview you start with, and then you have to plug in the numbers, the voters, and all the other factors. But this is the guideline on the priority list, and we've deprioritized 2. Geographical compactness, well, that's item 4. There's, okay. But item 2, I think it went from 3 in that area to now 4, as I've been corrected. So personally, I would like to see an option. I mean, if there's no other, if the public doesn't come forward, this is our map. But I don't think that it takes the second priority into consideration in that area.
Can I ask a question? Can't the council, if they want to create their own map, can they?
The council can.
Not individually, I don't mean
Oh,
together.
yes, and proposed our own map and then have the council staff evaluate it and then present it, yes. Any member of the public may do so, including a council member.
Mr. Mayor. I just want to step back to when we first started this discussion. One of the objectives, because we saw no population change from the 2010 to 2020 census, was that we wanted to approach this with making as few changes as possible to the districts. And our initial discussion at the staff level was, we thought we could do that in-house because it would be minimal changes. As Lori dove into this issue, it was more complicated than we thought, even with no population change, and she spent considerable time with it. Early on, we were thinking we'd hire a consultant to help with this. What we found is that all cities are going through this, and we couldn't even get a call back from a consultant to help us with the project. So about 3 years before the next census, we're going to retain a consultant so that we have one on board. But my point is that, you know, we wanted to keep this in-house, and it's become a pretty significant project, taking a lot of staff time, and, you know, between Lori and the city attorney's office, they've gone through multiple versions of maps, looking at different scenarios, and I think the city attorney has, you know, provided staff information that, you know, this one most closely fits the criteria of all the previous versions that we came up with that just didn't come forward because they didn't meet different criteria. So, I guess what I'm saying is, you know, to continue to try to come up with a different map, not only is going to take a lot of staff time, but I don't know that we're going to find an option that fits the criteria any better than this one.
Let me just here. Oops, I'm sorry. Just to reiterate a point, I know this is hard to see, but this is the historic, I mean, if you're looking at the intersection that you were concerned about, Councilmember Happy, District 2 already took a part of that, District 1, District 5. I guess District 4 did not take as much. And in the new map, it would take a little more here. So if you're trying to then create a separate district that really preserves this area as its own separate district and then put all the districts around it, it would probably very radically change the whole configuration because you wouldn't be able to use that population base to build up population for 2, build up for 5, build up for 4. Staff can undertake that attempt, but it could result in a very radically different, which could also end up putting people in districts, even more people in districts, that would miss an election cycle. Meaning because if they're going from a district that is otherwise up for consideration in 2022, and we have to move a lot of those people into districts that are not, that could also, in a sense, prevent those people from voting in a more regular sequence, if you follow what I'm saying. So there's those factors to take into account. There's also the possibility, I don't know, that to do that in a way to create one central district with these perimeter districts, the boundaries might shift council members in and out of those districts, which creates its own dynamics as well.
I understand that. I was just bringing up that observation that it seems like we've crept away and not closer to that priority. We've crept farther away from it. And
In terms of,
that neighborhood.
okay, not with respect to moving a sitting council member.
No,
out of the current
I don't, I don't know where people live. That's, staff knows that.
Right,
but-
and that's not the priority in the priority list, but it's just, I
Exactly.
just point that out.
I appreciate that.
So it's, in light of the fact I believe the public testimony portion is closed, it's up to the council to now give us direction as to you want us to prepare an alternative map and then present it to you at the February 22nd meeting. And then also whether you want to create a further deadline that's further in advance for people to submit their maps, which would mean that we would not hold the final public hearing on the 22nd. We'd likely hold it in March.
Let's make a motion or have a recommendation for the first part, and then we can do a second one for the
Okay.
So,
So the first part would be, do you want to direct staff to prepare a alternative map from the one presented as district map number 1?
make a motion.
I'll make a motion not to do that,
And I second.
just to move forward with the current map that we have.
Because you still have to, if we, you still would have, people can still do it February.
Yes, I mean, we
they
can,
still
in the
bring it up,
next
which even though
motion.
it doesn't matter, because we're gonna go by this, right?
Right, so in the next motion, you can set a deadline as to when people
Okay.
can submit their own maps. Yes.
Okay, well, I second with Alberto.
Roll call, please.
Instead of stating to not do that, can you state a motion?
Well,
Oh.
I guess another alternative way of stating it is to direct staff to only present the district map number 1 and any other map presented by the public
I'll motion to direct staff.
at the next public hearing.
Yeah.
And I
So-
second.
Roll call, please.
I'm sorry, what's the motion?
So the motion is to direct staff
Yes.
to present district map 1 as depicted here and any map presented by the public, but not to direct staff to undertake a new staff-prepared map.
Correct.
Is that clear?
Thank you, yes.
Hamlin,
Yes.
Happy,
No.
Henry,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Wallace.
Yes.
Okay, the next issue is you are allowed to have more than 4 public hearings. You're currently scheduled to have a public hearing on February 22nd, which would have been, under law, the 4th and only final meeting that you need to have in order to then act on the 22nd to start the adoption process. You need to tell the public when their deadline is to submit their own map. Now, I will say, since public hearing number 1 in November 9th, we have indicated to the public the opportunity to submit a map and identified mapping tools on the site. We did the same thing on December 14th. So far, we haven't received anything, but yes, you could give more time for people to prepare and submit their own maps. And so if you were to do so, it would be appropriate to provide us that direction, and then we will come to the 22nd meeting, maybe not as the meeting for adoption.
And what would the deadline date be?
You said it.
I would recommend 14 days from today.
Okay.
Okay, 14 days from today, so
I'll
2
make
weeks.
that, yeah, I'll make that motion 14 days from today. February 8th?
February 8th, is it? Okay.
Can I get a second?
I second.
Roll call, please.
Hamlin,
Yes.
Happy,
Yes.
Henry,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Wallace.
Yes.
Okay, and then in light of that, we will then do our own analysis as to whether or not, if we got a map on the 8th, whether we'd have time to present it with all the analysis. So we'll proceed, staff will proceed to take that into account depending upon what we receive. We will present whatever we receive on the 22nd. If we need more time, we will then let you know at that point. Okay? Does that
Thank
make
you.
sense? All right, I think that's all you need to do on this item unless you had any further questions or direction. If not, thank you very much.
Thank you.